I always thought that Louis XIV, XV, and XVI of France was father, son, and grandson, but that's not the case. Louis XVI was actually the great-great-great-grandson of Louis XIV. And today we're going to dive into a little bit about their history as well as transition their portraits to real life. If you're new to my channel here on Mortal Faces, I take historical portraits and I bring them to real life using my technology and Photoshop skills to give you my artistic interpretation of how I think these portraits might have looked if taken with a camera. I also provide commentary on these people to give you an idea of who they were and what their deal was. Okay, so let's get started. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more historical recreations and let me know in the comments who you'd like to see in real life. So the timeline for today's video will be in the 1600s to the end of the 1700s, and it's during that time that we have the three kings, Louis XIV, XV, and XVI, and we're going to start with Louis XIV. Louis XIV was known as the Sun King of France, and he was also known for the one to develop Versailles into the palace as we know it today. He led an absolute monarchy in France and was known for being very, very aggressive. He was born in 1638 west of Paris in another palace. And his brother, if you know a little bit about the history already, his brother was Philippe I, Duc d'Orléans, who was known for being a lover of both men and women. Louis XIV became king in 1643 at the age of 4 years old, and he became a leader of 19 million French subjects and a highly unstable government. Because he was so young, his mother, who was already the Queen of France, became his regent. And with his godfather, the two of them together watched over France until Louis became of age. And Louis had a very practical education rather than scholarly. His mother wanted to set up the kingdom so that he would rule with absolute and divine power. When his godfather passed away, in 1661, when Louis was 23, that's when he assumed full responsibility for his kingdom. And his first goal was to cut financial deficit and promote industrial growth. It was his idea to either cut or introduce certain privileges for people with power so that they become dependent on him. And by making the French government more orderly and stable, Louis XIV forced provincial nobles to relinquish their former political influence, and this essentially eliminated any remnants of feudalism left in France. He thus expanded the Palace of Versailles and made it the central place for France's monarchy. Many nobles had to move into Versailles by policy, and this made them even more dependent on him. From the 1660s to the 1680s, Louis XIV fought in a number of wars, making France a leading European power, and he ended up dying in Versailles in 1715 at the age of 76 from gangrene. Louis XIV's eldest son was the Dauphin of France, but he unfortunately died prematurely before his father in 1711 when he was 49 years old. The Dauphin had a son though, called the Duke of Burgundy. The Duke of Burgundy also died prematurely at the age of 29 from measles in 1712. But the Duke of Burgundy had a son as well. So in 1712, when he died, his son Louis would become the next Dauphin of France, and he was 2 years old. So in 1712, Louis XIV was still alive, and his great-grandson Louis, who was 2, would succeed him. The two guys in the middle were already gone. In 1715, Louis XIV passed away, and that made his great-grandson the next King Louis XV. He was 5 years old at the time. Until the age of 23, because he was so young, he had a regent. And his regent was his uncle, Philippe II, who was the son to Philippe I, Duc d'Orléans. Louis XV was seen as a weak ruler, whose reign can be characterized as one of debilitating stagnation. He fathered 10 children, and after the 10th, his wife said no more, and it was at that time he started to become a lot more promiscuous. He ended up getting 2 very famous mistresses, Madame de Pompadour and Madame du Barry. Initially, Louis XV was very popular, but because of his way of life and his poor military and political ideas, he lost his popularity entirely. The noble parliament of Paris began to make smear campaigns on the king around 1750. Lies, gossip, and blame were published, and his police force could not find and dismantle the illegal printing presses. So Louis XV could not defend himself from the campaigns efficiently, and this perceived him as an incompetent and frivolous king. Unlike Louis XIV, Louis XV did not have any public relation skills and was powerless against the ever-growing group of opponents and propaganda. Louis XV died of smallpox in Versailles in 1774 at the age of 64 years old, and at the time of his death, the French monarchy reached an all-time low with political, financial, and moral problems. Louis XV had a son, but his son also died prematurely like his forefathers from tuberculosis 9 years before Louis XV. But he had a son, so when Louis XV was to die, his grandson would become king. And his grandson was Louis Auguste. Louis Auguste would become King Louis XVI, and he was the last king of France before the Revolution. After the Revolution, there were more. This is before. And he was famous for marrying Marie Antoinette, and the two were famous for being guillotined during the French Revolution in 1793. Louis XVI was born in the Palace of Versailles in 1754. He was the third son to his father, the grandson to Louis XV, and the great-great-great-grandson to Louis XIV. He grew up strong and healthy, but was very shy. Since he was the third son, he had a scholarly education rather than a practical one. Louis's parents focused their attention on his older brother, who was to become the next king. But his older brother unexpectedly passed away when he was 9, and his second oldest brother already died at 5 months old. So now Louis Auguste was going to be the next king of France. Louis's parents died when he was around 10 and 12 years old, and this meant that he was at the mercy of his advisors and tutors. And his tutors provided him with poor interpersonal skills. His tutors taught him that austerity was a good sign in a monarch, and as a result, he presented himself as being very indecisive. When the Dauphin was 20, his grandfather Louis XV passed away, and that's when he became king, along with his wife Marie Antoinette. Louis XVI wanted to be a good king and help his subjects, but he faced enormous debt and rising resentment towards the monarchy. His character was not strong enough to combat the influence of court factions or give support to reformers and their efforts to improve France. His policy of not raising taxes or taking out international loans increased France's debt, setting in the motion of the French Revolution, and by the 1780s, the country was near bankruptcy. And this forced the king to support radical financial policies, not favorable by both the nobles and the people. When the pressure escalated, he reversed to his old teachings of being austere and quiet, and with fumbling decisions, riots broke out. King Louis XVI and his family were captured, and he was guillotined in 1793, being 38 years old. His young son would become the next pretender king, Louis XVII, but he died in prison at age 10. And those are the stories of Louis XIV, XV, and XVI up until the Revolution. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more historical recreations, and let me know in the comments who you'd like to see in real life, and I'll see you in the next one.